Okay, good day. Our topic for today is the equilibrium of particles in space. This is just a continuation of what we have in um, noncoplanar concurrent forces. So, pag-uusapan natin dito ay noncoplanar concurrent forces pa rin, same as before, but we are now in the condition of equilibrium. When you say equilibrium, from the term equal or say balance, lahat daw ng forces na nag-a-act sa isang body na po should be equal kay zero when you sum it up. Ibig sabihin, it will not cause any acceleration. Na po, or ibig sabihin, the object being acted upon by balanced forces should remain at rest or should be moving at constant speed. So, kasi sabi dito, a particle or a body is in equilibrium if the resultant of all the forces acting on it should be equal to zero. Mathematically, it follows that the summation of all the forces along x must be equal to zero. Also, the summation of forces along y-axis must be equal to zero, and the summation of all the forces along the z-axis is equal to zero. Again, this is the same as what we have discussed on previous chapters, the equilibrium. The only thing na magkaiba is that we have now the third axis, which is the z-axis, kasi we are now dealing with a non-coplanar concurrent forces or the forces in space. Ano po? So, it follows that if you're going to take the resultant from the formula of square root of f of x squared plus summation of f of y squared plus summation of f of z squared, if all of these are zero, therefore it follows that the resultant, which is the summation of all the forces, must be also equal to zero. What I'm talking about is, say for example, let me consider three forces just to illustrate. Say I have here our axis, your positive x, of course your positive y and positive z. Say I have here force A, or yes, see force A. So see force A, see force B, and another force C. Let me consider three forces. Then all of these three forces are given in vector form. Say AXI plus AYJ plus AZK. Then vector B is also given in its vector form. Say BXI plus B sub YJ plus B sub ZK. Then vector C or force C is also given in its vector form. You have the C sub XI plus C sub Yj plus C sub Zk. So, therefore, if ever na ang forces ay hindi given in vector form, you must first express this in its vector form. So, base dun sa mga tinuro ko sa inyo from our previous lecture. Why? Kasi, again, to sum up your forces, kasi we're talking about resultant. Just that the resultant is equal to zero. So, when you see resultant, you have to add the forces, and for you to do that, you have to add it per component. So, first, from the condition that the summation of all the forces along x-axis must be equal to zero, so you're going to sum up all of the forces along the x-axis. So, if we're going to add this, considering just the magnitudes, so ax plus b sub x plus c sub x is equal kay 0. Therefore, it also follows that the summation of f of y, or the forces along the y-axis, is equal to 0. Then, i-add nyo naman to lahat. So a sub y plus b sub y plus c sub y is equal to 0. So this will be your equation number 1. This will be your equation number 2. Since we have three unknowns, we need another equation, and that will be from the summation of forces along z-axis is equal to 0. Again, from the condition, you're going to add everything on the z-axis, and that will be equated to 0. So you have you have the a's of J plus B sub Z plus C sub Z is equal to 0, and this will be your equation number 3. How to solve this? Using systems of linear equation or using your calculator. So for our example, let's have here this one. 3 cables are used to tether a balloon as shown. Knowing that the balloon exerts an 800 Newton vertical force at A, determine the tension in each cable. So, kumbaga meron daw tayo ditong balloon na nakalutang, meron siyang tali. So, ito yung tatlong tali. Kung nakatali from point A, papunta kay B, papunta kay C, and papunta kay D. So, yung A, yun yung ating pinaka-point of reference, kumbaga point to be considered. Ano po? Then, nasan yung 800 Newton vertical force? Is that pataas or pababa? Ano po? So, that force is vertical, pero hindi niya sinabi kung pataas o pababa. Pero, base dun sa nakikita nating figure, it must be upward. Kasi, kumbaga, yung weight ng balloon ay hindi kinonsider. Ano po? So, may force na umihila dun sa balloon paakyat. Ano po? Para siya ay lumutang, and therefore, tinatali siya dito sa baba. Dito. Kaya ang hahanapin natin is yung tension dito. Ano po? Now, what's next is kailangan muna natin ma-determine yung mga coordinates ng ating mga points na sinasabi. First, halimbawa ay, so if this will be our axis, your x-axis, your y-axis, and your z-axis, therefore, itong point na to will be our reference or the origin. So, doon lahat magsisimula ang sukat. Again, you may choose your own reference, but in this case, better to use the reference na binigay sa inyo. So, mula dito, sa point O, what do you think is the coordinates of A? So, in terms of x, it should be 0. Then, in terms of y, it's 5.6. Then, in terms of z, it must be also 0. So, si A natin is equal to 0, 5.6, and 0. So, maybe this time you're all familiar na kung paano kumukuha ng coordinates. Si B naman should be negative 4.2 from sa x-axis. Tapos, sa y rather is 0. Then, 0 din siya sa z. I hope na susundan nyo kung bakit. Kung hindi, aralin kung paano naging. Kasi, mula dito, yung point na yon along the x-axis. I mean, sa x, yung distance from this point is 4.2. Kaso, along the negative x-axis, kaya negative 4.2. Then, 0 sa y, then 0 din sa z. So, that will be negative 4.2, 0, 0. How about si letter C? Si letter C, ang distance niya sa x ay ito. So, yan. So, that will be positive 2.4. It's positive 2.4. 0 siya sa y. Kasi nasa ground din siya, kapantay nung B at saka D. So, kapantay nung O. Then, sa Z siya ay positive 4.2. Ito yun. Yung distance niya na to. Na equal dito, 4.2. So, positive 4.2. Then, yung ating D is equal to sa X, that is 0. Then, sa Y, that is also 0. But sa Z, siya ay negative 3.3 meters. So, that will be our coordinates. So, ang gagawin natin, so, illustrate natin yung ating mga forces. So, lakang ko lang ng konti. So, this will be our, say, tension. Sabihin natin tension B na lang. This will be our tension C. And this will be our tension D. And this is the force na 800 newtons. So, how do we start? Siyempre, kailangan natin express lahat ng forces. So, dun muna tayo for force na 800 Newton. So, sa 800 Newton, sabihin ko ay force F na lang. Ano po? Yan. So, si force F, so, ang kanyang, di ba, dapat last yan ay the force F in terms of vector form is the magnitude of F, which is 800, multiplied by its lambda. Lambda ni F. Tama po ba? Kaso, ano yung kanyang direction? Kasi diga, parang along the, di ba, along y-axis lang siya. Tama po ba? So, ibig sabihin, if the magnitude is 800 newtons, tama pa, ang kanyang direction is along positive j lang. Wala siyang I, ano, kasi kung tutuusin, ganito ang mangyayari dyan. 0 siya sa I, ano po, kasi, tapos, kasi wala naman siyang component along I o along X, tapos directed siya towards vertically upward, so kaya positive j, si 1j, plus, wala din siyang component sa z, kasi directed siya sa y, so 0z din siya. So, ibig sabihin, pagka ganun, ang force natin na tinutukoy na to is 800 j lang, in terms of newtons. Ano po? So, meron na tayong F. Another one, dun tayo naman for tension B. Ano po? So, unahin natin kunin yung coordinates kasi di ba, si tension B, terms of vector, is the magnitude of tension B, or simply T sub B, multiplied ng kanyang lambda ni T sub B. Ano po? So, ano ba yung lambda ni T sub B? Kumuha muna tayo ng distances. Di ka kukuha muna tayo ng D sub X. Say D sub X ng B. So, that will be, so, ito yun, di ka? Kung saan siya pupunta, minus saan siya galing. Tama. So, it's, tawag dito, B minus A. So, that will be X of B minus X of A. Tandaan nyo ba yung formula? So, that will be negative 4.2 minus 0. And that will be negative 4.2. Of course, that will be in meters. Ano? Kasi ito yung meter. Ito yung meter din. So, that will be our d sub xb. Then, you have your dyb. So, that will be y sub b minus y sub a. Ano po? So, y sub b natin ay 0. So, saan ba ako tumitingin? Diba dito lang? Minus nito. Minus 5.6 meters. So, you have here negative 5.6 meters. So, that will be your dyb. And your dzb is equal to z sub b minus z sub a. Ano po? So, say b is, ito yun, 0 minus 0. So, that will be 0. Tama, 0 meters. DZB. Ano po? Yeah, tama. So, therefore, it follows, kung susulatin natin, hindi ko pwedeng ilagay, yung ating T sub B in vector form is equal to, sabihin ko ng magnitude ng T sub B or simply T sub B multiplied by lambda. By the way, hindi pa pala ako nakakuha ng magnitude ng distance. Ano po? So, yung distance natin, linisin ko lang po ito. So, D say B is equal to 0 meters. Therefore, the distance D is equal to the square root of D sub xb squared plus dx, dy b squared plus d say b squared. So, you have here d is equal to, square root nyo lang po yun. So, you have here, huwag nyo natin pakita. You have 7 meters na po sa distance. Therefore, yung ating lambda, kung susolvin natin yung ating lambda, if you're going to solve for the lambda, ba yung lambda natin? Ganito yung formula. Lambda ng xb, or simply lambda b na lang. Ano pang ginamit ko dito sa taas? Lambda x of b. T sub b, rather. Lambda ni tension b is equal dun sa dx b I plus dx dyb rather j plus dzb k all over d. Naalala nyo? So, lambda is equal to, so what is our negative 4.2 plus, that will be I plus, or rather minus 5.6 j plus 0k. Tama. So, pwede hindi mo na yung sulat. Divided by 7. Ano po? So, or, pwede nyo i-simplify yan. So, yung lambda natin, lambda ng tension B natin is 4.2. So, that will be 0.6. So, negative 0.6. Para ma-simplified, 6i minus 0.8 j. Therefore, yung ating tension B, pwede ba dito ko lang sulat? Yung ating tension B in vector form is equal yung kanyang magnitude na hindi natin alam, multiplied by negative 0.6i minus 0.8j. Therefore, kung i-distribute natin yon, we have negative 0.6 TBI minus 0.8 TBJ. Ano? So, yan. Then, another one, punta naman tayo dun sa tension C. So, tension. Okay, so for tension C, same process. So, for tension C, so therefore, the tension C in vector form must be its magnitude T sub C. Pwedeng ganyan yung symbol. Pwedeng simple as T sub C na lang. Basta na pag-usapan natin, say, multiplied by its direction, lambda ng tension C. Ano? So, first, we have to solve for the distances. So, distance x of z is equal to x of c minus x of a. Bakit? Kasi if we're going to look back with our figure, so ito yung tension C natin. Ano po, itong tension C natin. Ito yung kanyang final point C, and the initial point is always the A. No? So, therefore, so the values will be it's 2.4 minus 0. So, this will be 2.4 meters na lang. Ano? Then, this of YC, yung distance natin na yon is y sub c minus y sub a. Basta laging final minus initial. So, y sub c is 0 minus 5.6. So, that will be negative 5.6 na meters. And yung ating d sub zc is a sub c minus a sub a. So, that will be 4.2 minus 0. So, 4.2 minus 0. So, it's 4.2 meters. Then, solving for the distance. So, that will be dxc squared plus d sub yc squared plus d sub z c squared. So, pag pinindot nyo sa calculator yan, it's about that 2.4 squared plus 5.6 squared plus 4.2 square root answer. You have 37 over 5 or 7.4. 7.4. Ano po? meters. So if we're going to solve for the lambda of C is equal to dxci plus d sub ycj plus uh, d sub zc k all over d sub c. You have lambda of c, you have 2.4 I minus 5.6 j plus 4.2 k divided by 7.4. To simplify, baka masisimplify pa natin. So yung lambda sub c natin, 2.4 by 7.4. 12 over 37 para walang putol ay minus 28 over 37j plus yung 4.2 is 21 over 37k. So therefore, yung ating tension C dito ko lang isulat, in vector form is the magnitude C times its lambda, which is 12 over 37i minus 28 over 37j plus 21 over 37k. Yan. So, kung i-distribute nyo natin yun, si T sub C is equal to 12 over 37 T sub Ci minus 28 over 37 T sub Cj plus 21 over 37 T sub Ck. So, ito yung ating mga kailangan equation mamaya. Ito, for T sub C, T sub B, and for the force F, and another one, last, for the T sub D. For the T sub D, yan. So, again, the vector T sub D is equal to its magnitude multiplied by its lambda. Kaso, we need to solve for the lambda. Its distance dxd muna. It's x of d minus x of a again. It's final minus initial. So, ito, minus nito, you have 0. Is 0 meter. Then, dyd rather is y's of d minus y's of a. So, that will be ito, 0 minus 5.6. So, you have negative 5.6 meters. Then, d say d is x, rather z of d minus z of a. So, ito yun, negative 3.3 minus 0. So, you have negative 3.3 meters. Solving for the distance d, take the square root of dxd squared plus dyd squared plus dzd squared. You have 13 over 2 or 6.5. So you have 6.5 meters. Therefore, solving for the lambda of d, you have, again, by formula, you have d of xdi plus dydj plus dzdk all over yung ating d sub d. Sasubstitute nyo lang po yun. So, it will be 0 I minus 5.6j 5.6 plus this plus minus 3.3 k divided by 6.5. So, yung lambda ng d natin ay, of course, wala na siya sa I. Then, negative 5.6 divided 6.5. It's 56, negative 56 over 65. J minus is 33 over 65K. Therefore, it follows, kung susolvin natin yung ating tension D in vector form, tension D in vector form is yung T sub D natin na hindi natin alam yung kanyang magnitude multiply by the lambda, negative 56 over 65 J minus 33 over 65K, or T sub D is equal to, distribute nyo lang, negative 56 over 65J is, yan natin T sub DJ minus 33 over 65 T sub D K. Yan. So, you have the forces in vector forms nga lang, nawawala yung kanyang magnitude. And yun yung target natin. Okay, now we have the forces na. So, we can have our equilibrium conditions. Ano yung ibig sabihin ng equilibrium conditions? Say, di ba? The summation of all the forces along X is equal to 0. So, consider natin lahat ng nasa X. Ibig sabihin, lahat ng may I. So, you have negative. Ito yun. Lahat ng may I. Huwag nyo na isama yung I, but you have to consider yung negatives. So, you have negative 0.6 T sub B plus 12 over 13, or 37 rather, 37 T sub C, then negative 56, wala na pala. Ano po? So, dalawa lang yung may I. This not included kasi J to. Yan, hindi kasama. Yun lang may I. No, wait lang, yan. Yun lang may I ang kasama natin. So, itong dalawa lang. And that will be equal kay 0 na. Equal kay 0. And this will be our equation number 1. Again, how many equations do we need here? We need 3 equations kasi meron tayong nawawalan T sub B, T sub C, and T sub D. Ano po? Then, for equation number 2, consider natin yung summation forces Y is equal to 0. So, lahat naman ito, lahat ng may J, ito, at saka ito. Ano po? So, you have here 800 minus 0.8 T sub B. Then, you have negative 28 over 37 T sub C. Then, minus 56 over 65 T sub D is equal to 0. I-arrange lang natin sila alphabetically. Can I write this as 0.8 T sub B plus 28 over 37 T sub C plus 56 over 65 T sub D is equal to 800. So this will be our equation number 2. And last equation will be from, or coming from, summation of f of x is equal, f of z rather, is equal to 0. So lahat naman ng may k na sa z-axis. Ano po? So sino mga yon? So ito at ito. Ano po? So therefore, you have 21 over 37 T sub C minus 33 over 65 T sub D is equal to 0. Your equation number 3. So, paano natin sasolvein yan? You can have the systems of linear equation naman. Okay, so paano natin siya pipindutin with our calculator? So, the first thing na gagawin nyo, you have to rearrange this according kung anong gusto nyo. Pero, for this case, kung anong arrangement, say, ang arrangement ko ay TB, T sub C, and T sub T, dapat lahat ng equation is arranged that way. Ano po, yun nga lang, dito sa equation number 1, walang T sub D. Tapos, dito sa equation number 3, walang T sub B. Ano po, so, ibig sabihin, 0 yung kanilang values. So, using your calculator mode, 5, then yung 2, input nyo lang, but you have to consider yung sign and yung kanyang sequence. So, ang sequence natin ay T sub D, C, and D. So, we have negative 0.6 equals then 12 over 37. So, pinili natin yung fraction instead na convert natin into decimal kasi mapuputol yung value. Then, T sub D is 0. Dito yon. Then, 0 din to. So, 0 yung constant term niya equals. So, you have here positive 0.8 equals. Then, 28 over 37 equals. Then, you have 56 over 65. Ito. Then, you have the 800. Then, meron tayo ditong wala yung value ng T sub B. So, 0. Then, positive 21 over 37. Then, negative should be negative 33 over 65. Then, 0 equals. Yung unang lalabas dito is yung una yung in-input sa sequence. So, that is 200.9132. That is in newtons. Yung sunod na lalabas is yung T sub C. Hindi nyo lang equals. You have 371.6895 newtons. And lastly, yung T sub D natin or yung tension along D is 415.5251 newtons.